So when I say the phrases 2-day or less, lightning fast shipping, or lowest price always, are there any brands that come to your mind? Brands put a lot of time and effort and money into building this great reputation for themselves. They want that to be what comes to our mind when we think of their brand, right? But sometimes the reality of reputations, especially for you and I, is that reputations a lot of times come from people's assumptions, right? Like assumptions we make about other people or that they make about us. And when we make these assumptions, we're really just filling in the blank about someone when we don't even know them. So I don't know how you guys will fill in the blanks, but what comes to your mind when you hear all football players are blank, or people in band are always blank, or everyone that goes to this other middle school or high school, everyone that goes to that school, they're always so blank. I don't know how you guys filled them in. Maybe they were positive, maybe they weren't. But it's so easy for us to fill in those blanks and just make assumptions. And when we do that, what we're doing is we are saying what we expect from that person. We're saying what we think that person is capable of and how we think they'll respond in a situation. And we don't even know them. And the crazy thing about this is that it's a really big part of middle school and high school. I really remember these assumptions and reputations being a big part of it. But it's not just when you're a student. It's a human thing. We all have a tendency to just fill in the blank about people, to make these assumptions. And when we make the assumptions, when we fill in the blank, they're not even about that person. The reality is they almost always stem from our own experiences and our own insecurities. And I remember this so well. When I was in middle school, I was a very, very insecure person, and I really operated out of that place of insecurity in my life. And it caused me to fill in the blanks for almost everyone around me and make assumptions about them. And I didn't even know I was doing it at the time. But as I was in high school and I started to kind of move through those insecurities, and that was totally based on the fact that my relationship with God was growing stronger and I started to become secure in that. As that process was happening, I was able to see that I used to, and still did, make assumptions about people. I just hadn't seen it before. In fact, when I started high school, so I started at a brand new school in high school. In my freshman year, there was this one girl in my class. I specifically remember seeing her and immediately making an assumption, filling in the blank and deciding, hey, I'll probably just never even talk to her. She ended up being the most genuine and kind person to me when I first started at that school, and ended up being one of my best friends in high school for all 4 years. And right at the beginning, I had immediately filled in the blank and made this assumption about her. And I was so wrong about it. So we're going to look at a time where Jesus had an opportunity to kind of fill in the blank and make an assumption, and we're going to get to learn from how he approached that situation. So a little bit of behind the scenes before we start reading in John is that basically the Pharisees, who were leaders, they were getting kind of annoyed with Jesus, and they kind of wanted to trick him and like catch him in the act of doing something at least a little bit wrong. And so they went and they found this woman who was with a man that she shouldn't have been with, and they brought her out into a crowd of people where Jesus was. And so that's what we're going to pick up. And so we're going to be reading in John 8 verses 3 through the beginning of verse 6 if you want to grab your Bibles. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and placing her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. So what do you say?" This they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Okay, so what's happening here? So the Pharisees have brought this woman into this whole crowd of people where Jesus is, right? And basically, the Pharisees are like, okay, great. So either Jesus has to choose between saying, yes, let's condemn this woman for what she's done because that's the law, but then this whole crowd of people would turn against him and be mad at him, or Jesus would have to say, no, she's okay, and don't worry about the law, so then the Pharisees could say that Jesus didn't follow the law. So in the Pharisees' mind, they're like, perfect, we've got him, but let's see how Jesus responds to this situation. So we're going to continue reading the rest of verse 6 into verse 11. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." And once more he bent down and wrote on the ground. But when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus stood up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, sin no more." In Jesus' response to this situation, he actually manages to respond to every single person there in love. He challenges the reputations and the assumptions made about everyone involved. He says to the Pharisees, yeah, this woman is sinful, but you are sinful, and you have to remember that. And he says to this woman, hey, these assumptions, the way that people have filled in the blank about you, your past does not define your future. The way that what people expect from you, what people think you're capable of, or how you'll respond to situations, those do not define you. What define you is that you are loved by the creator of the universe. That's what affects your future. That is how Jesus responded in love in this whole situation. And through that response, Jesus proves that we are more than the assumptions and the judgments that people make about us. He proves that we are worthy of forgiveness and grace and a second chance because of his love. And it doesn't stop there, because we actually get to extend that forgiveness and grace and love to people around us. We serve a God that is a God of love, and we get to be a reflection of that in our lives. How awesome is that? So what does it look like for you to fill in the blank with love? How can you fill in the blank with love, and how will that affect what you expect from them? How will that affect what you think they're capable of, and how you think they'll respond in a situation? How will that affect what we expect about their future? If we're going to fill in that blank with love, if we know that what defines their future is the fact that they are loved by God. And when we do that, we get to be someone that is known for love. Just like Jesus is known for love, and just like he intended for his followers to be known by their love.